From Evoke Media, I'm Sabrina Mirage Naeem. With me is Cassia Binkowski, and this is Breaking Glass, a series of conversations with women around the world who are shattering glass ceilings and challenging social norms. They are audacious, gutsy, and their stories are echoed across borders and generations in a rallying cry that is changing the narrative for women everywhere. Today is an interesting and different conversation for us, and we're talking to musician Erin Jorgensen, who is also the communications director for Shout Your Abortion. Today's conversation is all about abortion. She gets real and personal with us. She tells us about a portion of her life that she has not felt comfortable talking about publicly. And we get really deep and intimate about abortions of all kinds and for all reasons. And I gotta be honest, at different points, it stretched us. It stretched us in different ways.
Because what you don't hear in today's episode is the hour-long debrief that Sabrina and I walked through after this conversation, after this interview, and about all of the things that we wish we had asked and all of the judgments that this conversation kind of challenged us to set down. We get really right to the heart of the issue, which is, do you think abortion is good or bad? Period, full stop. And is it that black and white? And we kind of bat that around a little bit. I mean, we were both challenged to figure out where we stand on that.
It is a hugely complex, sensitive issue that is very triggering. It is also not black and white, I think, for so many people because there are so many nuances here. But what Shout Your Abortion is trying to do is destigmatize a highly stigmatized issue where so many women, almost 1 in 4 women in the United States, will have an abortion in their lifetime. And we need to be able to talk about it. We need to be able to lift the shame from it so that it's not such a heavy burden for these women to bear. There is a community out there that exists, and talking about it, sharing stories, is one of the most effective ways of changing the impact and changing the story.
And I think despite the fact that, Sabrina, you and I, have a different our opinions around abortion in some regards and the nuances around the lines that we would draw personally, I think the one thing that we agree on and that Erin obviously shares with us is that this is not an issue that anybody should have any business legislating or setting boundaries around on behalf of another woman. Spoiler alert, I think we both feel very strongly that this is a choice that women should be making for themselves.
Exactly. And you're going to be hearing things that maybe stretch your comfort zone and maybe you agree with and maybe will challenge you. And that's okay because that's the nature of an issue like this, and that's the nature of having these conversations. So settle in and take a listen. Okay, Erin, thank you so much for joining us today. We're really excited to have this conversation, and it's a bit unique because most of the guests that we bring on this show, we have some kind of background, there's some kind of public profile out there, but your story is very personal to you and it's not really out there. So in preparing for this interview, we kind of have a lot of questions and we're excited to dive in because this one is a little bit of a blank slate for us. So thank you for joining us and thanks for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Great. So given that we don't know that much about you yet, please take us back to the beginning. Where were you born? What did your education look like? Tell us about your young adult life.
Wow, okay.
We're going all the way back.
All the details, yeah.
So I was born in Washington State in a town called Moses Lake, which is like a super small, like farming town, pretty religious. It's, if Washington State and the eastern side of the state, It's very conservative. It's like a lot of desert. I live in Seattle now, and I remember when I was growing up, I saw a picture of like the rainforest in Seattle, and I thought it was like, Brazil or something, I was like, there's no way that's the same state. So I grew up pretty religious. I grew up Mormon. I grew up on a farm. Yeah. And I moved away like as soon as I could and moved to the western part of the state. But
Where
yeah.
did you go? What'd you do?
I moved to Bellingham, which is like on the coast, kind of.
It's beautiful, yeah.
Yeah, super beautiful. And I studied music there. So I went to music school at Western Washington University and studied percussion. And I didn't finish, but I'm still like a percussionist and musician, and that's definitely my obsession. But yeah, I got out of like small town living as soon as I could and went to like another small town, but it was kind of like full of hippies. So I had like, both extremes of like a small town experience.
I mean, music is a really, really hard career path. I mean, being an artist in general is an incredibly hard career path. What did that look like? What did the kind of early days of pursuing that passion and going to school, graduating, what did that experience look like for you?
Let's see if I can sum that up. So, I mean, what I do is like a little bit strange. I started playing in drum corps, which is like glorified marching band, basically. And that's when I started playing marimba, which is my favorite instrument. It's just like a giant xylophone. And it is like a strange career path, and especially strange for me, because what I do, I would say, is pretty unique and not really... doesn't really fit into like an orchestral kind of box, which I think is what they prepare you for in school. And I remember realizing after a while, like, this is ridiculous. Like, you can get a job in an orchestra, like, maybe if somebody dies, you know what I mean? Like, there aren't that many like jobs, especially for like percussionists. So yeah, it's definitely been a struggle. Like, things are going great now. I'd say I'm like a musician with a day job, which is pretty amazing. But yeah, I worked in a like a theater for like performing arts for a long time before I started working with SYA. And just, I never really made a living as a musician, which has actually been kind of a blessing because I've been able to do exactly what I wanted to do. I don't know if I'm answering your question that well, but it's always been a musician with a day job, basically, which has been good for me.
I'm going to make a kind of a generalization, so forgive me, but my experience with Mormons, people who I know who are Mormon in my life and my surroundings, are generally very tight-knit with their families and kind of like stick around with family for a long time. What drove you to kind of leave your small town, go kind of chase a different career path? Was your family supportive of that? What did that picture look like?
So you're right about Mormons in general, I would say. And I have tons of cousins, of course. And most of their families are like super tight-knit like that. And I would say with my siblings and we're all like very close, but we were all always like a little bit of black sheep. I had tons of cousins and aunts and uncles in the town I grew up in, and they're all like very, hardcore Mormons, still like very religious. And me and my sister and my brothers were always kind of like the weirdos, like artists, or, just kind of like church is boring, or, like all that kind of stuff. So we all like left as soon as we could. And I would say my parents were, I mean, I hope they don't listen to this, but as supportive as they could be, but a little bit absent, Now I feel like I have that support, but it was definitely like a solo endeavor. Like, I don't think I had a ton of like parental support of like, yeah, be an artist, like be a musician. And my dad's still pretty religious. My mom quit as well. So there's definitely that kind of like fracturing as well, just kind of breaking away from everything. I don't know. I always knew from a young age, like, this is not for me,
Did you leave the church completely behind at that point?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how involved I ever really was. So I didn't have like a super uncomfortable, like religious break or anything. I mean, you get indoctrinated for sure from a young age, but I was happy to like stop going to like so much church and, but yeah, I never went to church again once I left my hometown.